It's time to have an honest talk about the future of Max Crosby with the Raiders. Crosby had a rough season statistically and faced injuries that kept him off the field. He missed a game earlier in the season against the Carolina Panthers, and his year was cut short due to an ankle injury, which he's currently recovering from. He's set to have surgery on that injury. Recently, Max appeared on Good Morning America, where he was asked about his future with the Raiders. Here's what he had to say. Yeah, the future of the Raiders. Obviously, I think everyone kind of knows what's going on. I mean, like I said, I'm there every morning. We just talked about it, and it's a little eerie around there. A lot of changes, new things happening. You know, with Coach AP and even with Tesco getting fired. First off, I want to shout out to those guys. They were amazing to me during my time there, but for me, I'm just focused on the day-to-day. A lot of things are out of my control. I'll just sit back and see what happens, but right now, I'm focusing on my rehab and taking it one step at a time. From what we can see, Max Crosby seemed uncomfortable during this interview. He was vague in his responses and didn't give away much about his future with the team. Max Crosby has always made it clear that he wants to stay with the Raiders, often expressing his love for the team and his desire to be a Raider for life. But in this interview, he didn't make that same strong declaration. Instead, he repeatedly said that we'll just have to wait and see what happens. He also used the word eerie to describe the current situation with the Raiders, which is an interesting choice. He mentioned how the firing of Antonio Pierce and Tom Tesco means this will be his fifth head coach in his short career. You can really feel his frustration with the lack of stability in the organization. It's clear that Max wants to win, but unfortunately, the Raiders haven't been able to build a consistent winning team since he was drafted. In 6 seasons, he's only had 1 playoff appearance. During the interview, they also asked him about the Detroit Lions, given that he's from Michigan. They wanted to know what the Lions mean to him and what he thinks of their head coach, Dan Campbell. Here's what he had to say. Seeing what Dan Campbell has built, hearing what people say about him, guys like Meek Robertson, who was my former teammate, and Pat O'Connor, who's now with Detroit, they all say the same thing. Max Crosby had a lot of praise for Dan Campbell, saying that one day he hopes to be in the locker room with him. He spoke about how incredible Campbell is, noting that he would literally do anything for his players. According to Max, Campbell lives by this philosophy, and it shows in the way he leads the team. While some people initially mocked Campbell for his bold statements about biting kneecaps, Crosby believes he truly stands by those words, and it's clear he respects that. It's worth noting that Max Crosby is from Michigan and grew up as a Detroit Lions fan. So, while he's dedicated to the Raiders, it's also clear that he recognizes the shift in the NFL landscape. The Lions, who have been on the rise, are now a legitimate Super Bowl contender, while the Raiders have struggled in recent years. For a player like Crosby, who is hungry for a championship, the thought of playing for a team like the Lions, especially if they make a deep playoff run or even reach the Super Bowl, could be hard to ignore. Imagine returning home, joining a contender, and playing alongside a defensive star like Aiden Hutchinson. It's easy to see why he might consider such a move. Meanwhile, the Raiders have been trying to build a similar defensive presence, but it hasn't quite come together yet. Max Crosby has certainly shown his potential, but let's be honest, he hasn't quite reached the level we expected from him yet. Right now, it's clear that Max is unsure about how to feel about the entire situation with the Raiders. And I think it's time we seriously consider the possibility that we might have to move on from him. I want to make it clear, though, that I hope this doesn't happen. I would love for Max Crosby to be a Raider for life. He brings so much to this defense and represents the kind of identity that this franchise needs. I truly admire his passion and his commitment, but at the end of the day, the signs are there, and it's hard to ignore the possibility of him leaving. As Raiders fans, how many times have we been in this situation? We've watched key players like Khalil Mack, Josh Jacobs, Derek Carr, and even Davante Adams leave. There's always been a part of us that says, no, they won't go anywhere, but time and time again, it's happened. As fans, we're so loyal and passionate that sometimes we don't want to see the signs when they're right in front of us. But with Max Crosby, I can't ignore that it's a real possibility. Hopefully, it doesn't come to that, but we have to be prepared for anything. If Max Crosby is willing to stay with the Raiders, there's another big factor to consider: his contract. Crosby signed a 4-year extension in 2022, so he's technically under contract through the 2026 season. However, the major issue right now is that there is no guaranteed money left on his deal. For a player coming off a season-ending injury, this could be a big wake-up call. Football is a violent game, and the average career lifespan in the NFL is only about 3.5 seasons. Max plays with intensity and takes on a heavy workload, which makes it even more risky. He's always giving it his all, and with that level of aggression, there's always the chance of a career-ending injury. If that were to happen, and he had no guaranteed money left on his contract, it could put him in a difficult financial position. Even if Max Crosby wants to stay, this is something he'll be thinking about. For the Raiders, this is a situation they can't ignore. Whoever the new head coach and general manager are, they need to address this quickly. They need to either lock up Max Crosby with a new deal or consider moving on from him. This will be a crucial decision, and it's something to watch closely in the offseason. As fans, we've seen how important it is to make the right moves when it comes to our star players. Looking at the situation with Davante Adams, it's clear that if you wait too long, you might not get the best return in terms of draft capital. Last year, if the Raiders had moved Adams before the situation with him and Antonio Pierce completely soured, they might have been able to secure a second-round pick or even a first-round pick. Instead, because the situation dragged on, they only managed to get a third-round pick. This is exactly the kind of situation I want to avoid with Max Crosby. If we wait too long and don't make a move soon, the value we get for him, if it comes to that, could decrease. It's going to be a fascinating offseason with a lot of uncertainty. We still don't know who the next head coach or general manager will be, and on top of that, the future of Max Crosby is a major question. From a financial standpoint, the Raiders will need to figure out what to do with Crosby's contract. But beyond that, it's clear that Crosby is frustrated. I wouldn't say he's completely fed up with the team yet, because when you're truly fed up, you request a trade, but the constant instability with a new head coach every couple of seasons has definitely taken its toll on him. The Raiders are going to need to sit down with Max Crosby and sell him on the new direction the team is heading. They need to show him the plan to turn things around and convince him that they're serious about winning. Crosby clearly wants to win, and after a tough 4-13 season, he's probably not excited about the prospect of a rebuild. So, this will be an important conversation in the coming months. This is definitely a conversation the Raiders need to have. Even if they manage to restructure Max Crosby's contract and he returns to the silver and black next season, the situation won't be without its challenges. At that point, Crosby could be on thin ice, and the Raiders will have to prove they made the right decision in keeping him. Whoever the new head coach and general manager are, whether it's someone like Ben Johnson or another candidate, they'll need to show that they have a solid plan for the team's future. So, the situation with Max Crosby is tricky, and the Raiders are going to have to navigate it carefully. I really hope he stays with the team. But Raider Nation, I want to hear from you. Do you think there's a real possibility that Max Crosby could get traded? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. That's all for today's video, Raider Nation. If you're new to the channel and you love Raider-related content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.